try that again. And now, introducing this here Glenjamin guy. Slow and steady, he was heavy. Now he says no to fries. No more tall boys, he won't drink whiskey or rye. No alcohol for this here Glenn guy. He is Glenn Clark.
Not bad. I mean, it's the effort was certainly there.
I wrote it on the way over here.
I'm good with that. Good morning, it's Glenn Clark Radio. I dated a girl who referred to me as, this is not a joke, referred to me as Glenjamin. Constantly. That was who I was to this girl. I was just, did not match in any circumstance. We would go out and have like real events and like be around people, and she would be like introducing me to her friends and family and be like, and this is my boyfriend. By the way, we were barely that. She'd be like, this is my boyfriend, Glenjamin. I swear to God. And I'd be like, what the F is that? Like, what in the world is that? So I did spark a memory when you said that this morning, or you included that in your lyrics. Yes, good morning, it's Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn, he's Paul, and the reason why Paul was doing that is because the great Don McLean is going to join the show this morning, which is still a surreal sentence. I've tried talking to people about it over the last couple of days. I got an email last week from someone I know in the world of public relations who said, hey, question for you. Would you be willing to have Don McLean on your show? And I thought that I must be missing something because, like, there was a basketball player, a legendary basketball player at UCLA named Don McLean, and I've had him on a few of my shows, particularly when I worked out on the West Coast because he did a lot of Pac-12 basketball then. And I was like, I would guess. And then I read it again, and, like, it was not spelled Don. That Don McLean has an M-A-C. This was spelled the way that Don McLean spells his name. So I was like, Don McLean? Don McLean? Like, is this really a question? F yes! Don McLean is responsible for the soundtrack of so many of the moments that meant the most to me in my life. Growing up, being in a car with my father, he'd be listening to Steve Rouse and WQSR back in the day, some good time oldies, and it was, Ken Zales said to me the other day, he's like, I'm pretty sure American Pie was like the first song I really knew the words to in my life. And Ken's a couple years older than I am, but it's 100% the case for me. I know that to be factual because literally some of the first memories that I have are being in the car with my father and American Pie coming on and him turning it up and us belting out the words to American Pie when I was, probably my son's age, 6 years old, 7 years old, something in that neighborhood, because it's meant that much to me. So, and then as I got older, it was one of those songs you could put on at the point of the night where everyone was inebriated, and everybody would just start singing along and maybe crying at some point. It was a lot of that. If you knew a guy who played the guitar, I met a guy who played the blues. I asked him for some happy news. I would just ask anybody, anytime there was somewhere, like you would do like a campfire event, somebody would bring their guitar. At some point during the night, if you were doing a certain amount of drinking, I would say, okay, it's time for an American Pie sing-along, because it was the way you could get everybody that was at the event to start participating. So this is really surreal to me. Don McLean celebrating the 50th anniversary. 50 years ago this week, American Pie hit #1 on the Billboard charts. It would stay there for a month. I am pretty... I can't believe... and I just something I didn't know until I was getting ready to talk to Don McLean. It was the longest running #1 song in the history of music until this past year, when it was replaced by the 10-minute version of All Too Well by Taylor Swift. And with no disrespect, because that particular Taylor Swift song is far better than the songs that she had put out for a few years. Taylor Swift had like a really great period of putting out iconic pop tunes, and then she thought she was a great folk singer, and everybody told her that, despite the fact that it's not good. Like, it's just not good. It's just that we all like Taylor Swift, so we're unwilling to talk about the fact that, like, her last record stunk. So it's an awkward conversation that nobody wants to have, and I'll continue. Andrew Steck can get as defensive as he wants whenever we do this. The last Taylor Swift record was not good. It wasn't that it won Album of the Year at the Grammys. It's not just that it didn't deserve that. It's that it wasn't a good record. It was melodic and bad. And that's okay. Everybody gets to have one of those. We just should be willing to, as adults, say that. This, because this was, of course, a remake of one of her old records, This is better than that because this is when she was making good music. But all due respect, the notion of All Too Well being the song that knocked off American Pie is that's an indignity. And that's, again, with respect to Taylor Swift, who I think mostly is a very good performer and has made some very good songs over the years. Her early stuff stunk, and then she really settled into like a nice 5 to 8 year period of making significant pop songs that mattered and were really good and iconic, frankly. This is not that. This is a song that we just have nostalgic feelings about or whatever, but it's not that. And knocking off American Pie, maybe the greatest song of all time, that is a travesty, man. Like, that's a travesty. That should not be happening. But, alas, it's the case. No longer the longest-running number one song in the history of music, American Pie, but still the most important, frankly, song in the history of music. Don McLean is going to join the program a little bit later on, which is just such a surreal thing to say. He's coming to the Lyric Opera House this summer to celebrate the 50th anniversary of American Pie. Also this morning, we are going to chat with Patrick Stevens, as we do every Tuesday. We'll talk college hoops. I guess we'll keep talking Maryland, but there's not anything to say. They're just not good. They play again tonight on the road at Michigan. And I know I've joked over the last couple of years about, like, man, I don't even really watch the games. If I was home and the game was on, I assure you I was still watching the games the last few years. Tonight, I've got nothing else. There's no football to watch. I don't have a game to do myself. I will be home tonight at 7 o'clock, and I don't know that I will even put the game on for as much as a minute. There's just nothing. There's nothing to learn. There's nothing to see. One of the most absurd things that I've heard, sort of like Taylor Swift, they landed a transfer over the weekend. This kid Cassius McNeely, I believe Texas A&M, decided to it was a double-digit scorer, decided to transfer to the University of Maryland, which makes no bloody sense. Like, you don't know who the coach is going to be. Why would you transfer to Maryland right now? It's so weird to me. I tried reaching out to him. I haven't heard back from him yet because I do want to talk to him. Like, it's such a strange decision to make. I'm going to transfer to Maryland having no effing clue who the coach is going to be. And that's part of the problem even with watching this team. It's not just that they're bad. It's that I don't know if any of these players are going to be part of this moving forward. I know Jeff Erman, when we talked to him last week, seemed pretty convinced that Julian Reese would probably stick around no matter who the coach was, because his sister's there and he's from Baltimore and, seems to think that Julian Reese's decision to go to Maryland was less about Mark Turgeon and more just about Maryland, and that might ultimately end up being true, but I would still need to know that, and that's the tricky part. Like, I can't even watch right now and say, yeah, they're no good, but I want to see Julian Reese play because, he's what they're building around moving forward. Well, I hope he is, but I don't know that either. This is college basketball in 2022, man. I have no idea who's going to be a part of this thing moving forward. So, but there is good college basketball. Towson got another win yesterday. Loyola's kept rolling. They're tied with Navy atop the Patriot League standings. There is good college basketball that's happening in this area, and I would encourage you to support it and get out to games if you're comfortable being out in places like that. Because there is good college basketball. There was an absolute, if you did not see it over the weekend, Morgan Coppin, which is always wonderful. If you've never done Morgan Coppin, and we can probably have an open and honest conversation about this, either because you're frankly white and you have some irrational fear of going to games at Morgan and Coppin. One, shame on you. Two, if you're a sports fan in this area and you believe you are a Baltimore sports fan and you've never gone to a Morgan Coppin game, strike that from the record. You are not the Baltimore sports fan that you think you are. You're an Orioles fan. You're a Ravens fan. You're not a Baltimore sports fan. Morgan Coppin is at the heart of Baltimore sports. What it means to our city is overwhelming. I didn't get to go on Saturday because I was working a game at Loyola, but I've been to a number of Morgan Coppin games over the years, and they're always unreal. The atmosphere is unlike anything else you can get in this area. And if you missed it on Saturday, the Morgan Coppin game ended on a half-court buzzer beater from Nenda Tark as Coppin State beat Morgan, I think it was 79-76. It was incredible. It was awesome. College basketball in this area is really good. You don't have to just say, well, I'll watch the Capitals for the next couple of months. You can actually support the things that happen here. Just because Maryland's bad or uninteresting doesn't mean you can't be a part of college basketball season. And I get it. I'm not trying to shame you. I'm not trying to say you're an awful person. But it would be nice if we actually embrace the things that were ours a little bit more. And there's really good college basketball happening. It would be nice if we would embrace that a little bit. I'm off my soapbox. We'll talk to Patrick Stevens about it in a minute. Also this morning, Andrew Brandt's going to join us, longtime Packers executive, now with SI. He's, of course, been in the media for a bit. We're going to chat with him about Lamar Jackson and Lamar Jackson's contract situation and his future. I'll throw out my theory that, if they make him prove it, I would request a trade. If I was Lamar Jackson, I would say, let me get in on this quarterback market. Not every team is going to be able to get Russell Wilson. We don't actually know if Aaron Rodgers is even going to be available. There are too many teams that need quarterbacks. If you want me to prove it, let another team pay me instead, is what I would do if I were Lamar Jackson. And I wrote about that at PressBoxOnline.com, and I'm not going to waver from it, kind of no matter what Andrew Brandt says when we talk to him. If I'm Lamar Jackson and you're the Baltimore Ravens and you're saying, well, we want you to prove it another year, I've proven it. There's no more proving it. I get it. It was a rough 4 weeks. The week before that, I was one of the front runners for MVP this season. Stop the nonsense. Let's get the deal done. And I don't know that the problem is on that side. It might very well be that Lamar Jackson's saying, come hell or high water, what I want is $60 million a year. I mean, I have no reason to think that's the case, but that might be. I mean, it's possible there's just something we don't know, that he's looking for a number that truly is unprecedented. And that could be part of the problem the Ravens are dealing with, right? This is the problem with Lamar Jackson not having an agent. We just don't really have all the details. But we'll talk more about it with Andrew Brandt, a man who knows a thing or two about contracts, a little bit later on in the show. So that's what's coming up on the program today. If you missed it, we announced that we're going to do our first sort of game watch event at Live Casino and Hotel. As the NFL chick, Sarita Hubbard, and I will be there this Sunday for we now know is the Rams-Buccaneers game at 3 o'clock. Come join us in the FanDuel Sportsbook. We're going to have a great time hanging out. Reed and I will do some sort of content during the quarter breaks and at halftime. But more than that, we're just going to be there hanging out with you. We're going to be making bets together. I, despite having a terrible weekend in picks, had a very good night last night between deciding I was going to go heavy on the Rams, and I was happy that I did that. I also made quite a few tennis bets last night, put in a few parlays, and it was a good night for your boy, betting-wise. I mean, it was a good night. I probably came out on top at like $200 last night. It was a pleasant evening after a bad weekend of NFL playoff picks. It was a nice salvation and very much needed in our picks contest that I got that last night. So I go back ahead of Kyle Ottenheimer by one game going into the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. So not much breathing room, but at least I'm not trailing, which was a real possibility going into last night. The Cardinals, yuck, we'll talk about that in a second. Anyway, this Sunday, we're all going to hang out. We're going to bet together, just have a good time. If you haven't checked out the FanDuel Sportsbook yet, it's time for you to see it. It's immaculate. I was told they put in an additional 20 self-service kiosks from the last time I was there, so it could not be easier for you. I believe they're up to 50 total self-service kiosks now for betting. Could not be easier for you. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can go right up to the machine, punch it in, and go that route to make your bets. That's what we're going to be doing on Sunday at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino Hotel in Hanover. Look forward to seeing you there. Are we having an issue related to MixLR by chance this morning? I just got a message from somebody that said we might be. We good? It says we're good.
Yeah,
are we on the right accounts? That's part of the problem. Or are we on up in the corner? Look at that. Are we on the wrong account?
It says press box.
Yeah, it should be on the Glenn Clark Radio account. All right, so that's the issue that we're having. My apologies to everyone. That's something that's got to be changed after the Saturday show because you guys don't do it now. We'll just stay there. That's my apologies for that being the case. We'll try to get that fixed moving forward. It's something we got to do every week, and sometimes these things happen, but we'll.
Yeah, that's 100% my fault. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna strike that. Go ahead and switch it. Go ahead and switch it because we got a recording running of the show, so we can upload that later on today. So that's my fault for not seeing it earlier. Thank you guys for letting me know that there was an issue. Okay, now a couple things. One, related to the game last night. Obviously, not good for the Arizona Cardinals. It was a terrible performance, and it was a bummer after a weekend of bad football games to have there be one more. Just a real bummer that for the weekend we got one, I guess 2 good football games, and even those were kind of wonky, but they were at least good football games, and 4 utter and complete duds. It's a bummer. There's kind of no getting around that. It's a bummer that the majority of the games that were played on this first weekend ended up being utter duds. As I said yesterday, it's not going to, you're not going to get me to say this is why there should be fewer teams in the playoffs. It's not like this every year. It was a weird weekend, and every circumstance was maybe a bit different, right? Like you could say the Eagles didn't belong or the Steelers didn't belong. If you want to do the bit where you say, I don't think there should be 7 teams in the playoffs, you're rewarding mediocrity. That's fine. The Cardinals were the best team in the NFL for the bulk of the season. And they fell off when they lost DeAndre Hopkins. And that's, if we're being honest, the real problem in relation to not just adding another game, but the nature of a football season to begin with, is injuries make it that football ends up being, to some extent, a war of attrition. And we know that more than anything in Baltimore. A healthy Baltimore Ravens team would be quite compelling going into the postseason. But many Ravens fans found themselves saying going into week 17 or week 18, I don't even know that I want this team to get in. Because why do I want to watch this secondary if they happen to luck their way into a spot, they're going to get abused by the Kansas City Chiefs. Why would I want to watch that? And that is one of the issues the NFL is dealing with. When you've got all the players on the field, the product is really good. And if all of these teams were completely healthy, my gut is you'd have 7 really compelling playoff teams in both leagues. The problem being, it's nearly impossible. And by the time you actually get to the playoffs, the Arizona Cardinals, with DeAndre Hopkins, are a more competitive, interesting, compelling football team. Would they have beaten the Rams last night? I don't, obviously it was lopsided. There's no reason to feel that way, but it definitely would have been a different game because they were a completely different team when they had a healthy DeAndre Hopkins. The Baltimore Ravens were an utterly and completely different football team when they just had a few injuries instead of all of them. It is difficult in the NFL to keep star players from every team on the field. It's impossible for the entirety of the season. And it leads to this, where you get to the playoffs, and ultimately the answer is, who's in the best shape health-wise? We talked about this with Rocky Boyman going into the Ravens' second meeting with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are a remarkable story. And as much as the story is about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, it's about something else. They've been unbelievably lucky from a health standpoint. Incredibly lucky from a health standpoint to keep their players on the field throughout the course of the season. Remarkable. They weren't as fortunate a year ago, right? They lost Joe Burrow, and at the point at which they lost Joe Burrow, they had nothing left. The Ravens, the last time they won the Super Bowl, they were pretty fortunate. They lost Ladarius Webb. They lost Jameel McLean. But for the most part, they got their guys back. They got Ray Lewis back. They got Terrell Suggs back. And you could say those guys were kind of a shell of themselves when they got back. They came back. For the most part, they were pretty fortunate from a health standpoint. The bummer about the NFL playoffs is that after 17 games, you're going to get this. And we can scream and you can yell at the team and you can say the Cardinals are a joke or Kyler Murray's a fraud or Cliff Kingsbury's that, but we all know because we all watched this season what happened to them. They were an utterly and completely different team without DeAndre Hopkins, which, kind of makes sense considering he's DeAndre Hopkins. We can yell and piss and bitch and moan about Greg Roman. We know the Ravens were a completely different team when they didn't have a running back. It really is that simple sometimes. We try to go to great lengths to solve these problems. Well, maybe you can't have this many teams in the playoffs. So maybe when you lose players, when teams aren't healthy, you're going to have problems. The Ravens had a lot of them. The Cardinals had, I don't know who else was hurt. I don't pay that much attention to the Arizona Cardinals, right? I know DeAndre Hopkins was out. They might say there was somebody else in a lineman or somebody I'm just not thinking of that was particularly significant to them too, but I just don't know who it is. I know they lost Rodney Hudson for a while, but I think they got him back, right? Wasn't he playing last night? They lost Budda Baker during the game. That was very scary, but thankfully he appears to be okay. Health is the story. And when you're playing without your best player, you're not going to be as good of a football team. And it's a bummer for them. Like, I don't care because I don't follow the Arizona Cardinals, but it's a bummer for them because this might have been the year. Like, they might 5 years from now look back and say that was our best chance, was that season.
Even without DeAndre Hopkins, the Rams secondary was so beat up, Eric Weddle had to come out of retirement after he hadn't played in over 740 days. I don't know that Kyler Murray
They still had Jalen Ramsey, though. Like, you're pretending it's so beat up. Like, they added some depth, and he played a little bit, but, like, they were still quite top-heavy. I mean, when you start with Jalen Ramsey, and this isn't a down Jalen Ramsey. This is Jalen Ramsey, the best cornerback in football.
Yeah, I get it.
Your secondary can only be so bad.
I get it, and I get that he had to cover A.J. Green instead of DeAndre Hopkins. I get that.
It's a significant difference.
I watched the way Kyler played, even with DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm not trying to tell you that with DeAndre Hopkins, he was great with DeAndre Hopkins. What are you talking about?
I'm saying even last night, even with DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know that it would have mattered.
I mean, if what your point is that Kyler Murray looked like he was a mess, I'm not going to argue that he looked like he was a mess, but it is much easier to be a mess when you don't have a DeAndre Hopkins to throw the football to.
Yeah.
I'm not. Now, somebody would say maybe that means Kyler Murray. I've said abundantly over and over and over and over again over the years. It's sort of like the bit that people were trying to do a few weeks ago where, like, this coach isn't as good without these, that insane stat that was flying around on Twitter about here's John Harbaugh's record without Lamar Jackson or Ray Lewis. And I'm like, what do you think this means? It's the same thing that we say all the time, and I had this conversation ad nauseum when we talked about Joe Flacco. Quarterbacks are better with good receivers around them. This notion that we had that a quarterback is supposed to make the receivers around him better is hogwash. It's not a thing. It's something we want to be true because it makes us sound smart when we say it, but it ain't true. Every quarterback is better when they have really good receivers around them. Period, plain and simple. If you want to say Tom Brady is the one example of a guy who was able to have a highly productive offense, I'm not talking about the Randy Moss years because clearly he had high level, but when you get into like the tail end of that, like the year that Rob Gronkowski was hurt and they won the Super Bowl anyway, we can have that conversation. But you've created one. You've got an example of one guy who was able to survive not having super high-end talent around him. Tell me the others. List me the other quarterbacks who were really good without having super high-end talent around them. And by the way, that might be a greater testament to Lamar Jackson, who's had maybe better than what Joe Flacco had at some times, but has not had, for the most part, upper echelon talent around him. I guess Mark Andrews is becoming that guy and has become that guy. But to some extent, it's a testament to Lamar Jackson, who, among this group of guys, has Lamar Jackson had Stephon Diggs? Has Lamar Jackson had DeAndre Hopkins? Has Lamar Jackson had, Jamar Chase? None of that. Don't get me wrong. Kyler Murray looked like a mess last night. I'm not trying to argue that. But it's way easier to look like a mess when the guy that you've always been able to throw the ball to, and even when he's covered, you can just throw the ball to him anyway because he's DeAndre Hopkins, isn't there. You need to surround your quarterback that you believe in. And I don't know to what extent I think Kyler Murray is, he's clearly far better than the majority of quarterbacks in the NFL. He's in the top third of NFL quarterbacks. Where he is among that group, I don't know exactly. What's the difference between Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott? What's the difference between Kyler Murray and trying to think of somebody who's outside the top, like the top 8, there's a pretty clear, I guess it's pretty clear. Anymore, I don't know where Russell Wilson finds himself among this group because it's been bad. I still think he's that guy.
Is he better than Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He's definitely better than Jimmy Garoppolo, despite the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is playing good football. But at his highest end, Kyler Murray is better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Somebody's going to end up probably trading for Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason. It was a tough game to watch, but the story was DeAndre Hopkins. The story of the Cardinal season is losing DeAndre Hopkins.
Isn't his contract up?
Whose?
DeAndre Hopkins. It was only a 2-year deal that he signed with Arizona, if I remember correctly. It was some like astronomical number for 2 years. And I think his contract's up after this season. I'm wondering if when they see what they are without him, if they bring him back.
He's under contract for I see. They put in a potential out. I don't know who gets to decide that. The player can void 2024. Hang on a second. No, he's still under contract through 2022. Then there's an out after that.
Okay. I thought it was a 2-year deal when he signed last year.
No, it might have been tacking
or maybe
on
a
2 more years.
Extension, yeah,
that's my gut. No, he's still under contract through 2022, and then there is some sort of out after 2022, but I don't know if it's his or theirs or what it is. But yeah, he's got a fully guaranteed 2022 deal.
Gotcha.
But no matter what, it's DeAndre Hopkins. If you're the Arizona Cardinals, he ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no.
Well, tell that to the Texans.
Well, I understand, but there's only one team that can be that insane. I mean, in fairness, there have been other teams that have been insane related to wide receivers. I mean, it was insane that the Minnesota Vikings decided to move on from Stephon Diggs. They happened to luck out and end up with Justin Jefferson, which is look pretty effing good, right? Like, but that required them to use another draft pick on another wide receiver. Like this notion that they got better, well, they just sort of moved their deck chairs around and allowed another team to get much better in the process, clearly. And that other team that got that guy could win a Super Bowl, whereas the Vikings, that's not going to be happening, clearly. I don't understand the way that teams have treated star wide receivers in recent years. It's been almost insane to me. It reeks of this, we want to force the issue that you're supposed to make the wide receivers around you better, and it's just not a thing. I don't know how long we can continue to say this in without it being remotely true until at some point we get it through our thick skulls that's not the way that it works. Even if you think you have a quarterback, you still have to surround them with top-notch talent. It's insane. I mean, it's just this it's a breathless thing that we've said over the years, and it's just been accepted. Oh, your quarterback's got to make your receivers better. What? And some of it is unscientific, right? Like some of it is how good was Reggie Wayne versus how good was he because he was with Peyton Manning, right? Like we could do that for eternity. But there's every reason to think Reggie Wayne was a really good wide receiver. Yeah. There's no reason to think that he was trash and Peyton Manning made him a good wide receiver. Was he better because was he more productive because he was with Peyton Manning? Yeah, probably. Probably more productive than if he had been, say, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. If he had been with Jay Cutler, like I'm guessing that he wouldn't have been quite as productive, but my gut tells me Reggie Wayne would have been really good no matter where he was.
Yeah. A quarterback doesn't make you be able to run routes better and have
those,
better hands.
Those types of things, 100%. Oddly, speaking of Reggie Wayne, I saw today is the day that the Hall of Fame voters are getting together to vote, which is really bizarre. I don't understand that. They're doing it remotely again, which, like, I get. Like, that part of it I wouldn't be all that worked up about. But do they really believe that they can keep this under wraps for the better part of a month? The Hall of Fame class is not scheduled to be announced until the NFL Honors Show, which is the Thursday before the Super Bowl. And, like, I can do math. We've got the divisional round, the AFC championship, the championship round, and then 2 weeks to a Super Bowl. We're talking about the better part of 4 weeks until the class is supposed to be announced. I get that. I'm sure all of them are told you're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to say anything at all. You certainly, these guys aren't going to go out and tweet who the people that are in that room. By the way, it's always been Garceau. I guess it's still Garceau. I just realized that. I don't know what the story is there. I've never actually done any work on that. Garceau doesn't cover football any longer. He's a baseball broadcaster now.
Didn't we have was it Dave Ginsburg last week who said you still get for baseball you still get a 10-year.
And by the way, and it's after you get 10 years even after you give up your BBWAA membership. Dave is actually still covering a lot of baseball, so he's not even giving up his membership at this point. But
I'm wondering if it's the same for the NFL.
I don't know. Well, it's not the NFL. The NFL has nothing to do with this. This is
or for the Hall of Fame, I mean.
I don't know how it's selected, but and yes, certainly Scott Garceau watched all of these players and is plenty capable of voting on all these players. He's only 1 year removed. I don't know what the number would be. Like maybe it would be 5 years. It's very interesting. It would be weird to me that someone and we just got to be honest about this. Scott professionally is not covering. I mean, maybe I don't know something. Maybe he still goes to the games because he's the voter. Like I don't go to the games any longer, so I don't know. There's a weird thing that hit me that his job no longer has anything to do with football, and he would continue to be the Hall of Fame voter. It's a weird thing. But the point is that Scott, if he still is the voter, and I assume he is because I haven't heard anything about that changing, is not going to, walk out afterwards and start tweeting about who they voted into the Hall of Fame. I get that. That's definitely not the way this is going to go. You're not going to see the voters go on and say something. But, for example, I'm trying to think of who. So whoever the voter is in Jacksonville that's presenting Tony Baselli today has probably had a lot of this is something I can tell you about the process. The presenter spends a lot of time with the candidate preparing the presentation. It's why you always see whenever the inductee goes in, they always take time to talk about who their presenter was because their presenter really does spend a lot of time with them. What do you want me to tell these people? You're the candidate. What's the message that you want coming across in that meeting about you getting into the Hall of Fame? So whoever I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Vito Stellino. Whoever the voter is in Jacksonville that's presenting Tony Baselli has been spending a lot of time, presumably, with Tony Baselli. And it wouldn't stun me if Tony Baselli said, hey, man, could you I won't tell anybody. Could you tell me? And you're inclined to be like, I don't want this guy to have to sit around and wait. You might code it. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you, but I would just say it's looking good. Something like that, right?
Right.
I just really find it hard to believe that we're not going to find out who made it into the Hall of Fame between now and literally the Thursday before the Super Bowl. I get it. These are all journalists. There's all people that want to guard information, man, but it's a really long. I just don't understand why it has to be so early that they would do the voting instead of doing it, say, the Tuesday of that week. If you want to do it remotely, do it remotely. But maybe on that Tuesday, you have them all get together, and so then you only have to kill 2 days before you announce the class instead of having to kill 4 weeks. Just a really weird bit that they're doing it that way. But yeah, today is the day that Hall of Fame voters are getting together for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class and voting on who's going to get in this year. And I guess they're just hoping that they will manage to keep everyone from knowing somehow who it is that ends up getting in. And then one more thing I wanted to get to here at the top from Travis. Travis got to me yesterday and said, Glenn, did you see the hubbub that you started related to Len Elmore? I did, Travis. So Len Elmore came on with us last week. He doesn't want Bruce Pearl. A few of the Maryland websites wrote about that, right? And then Len ended up getting into a back and forth last night with a bunch of different Maryland fans who kind of came after him for about some respectfully, others, about him not wanting Bruce Pearl to be the next coach of Maryland basketball. And Len is very, he's been going back and forth. And these weren't all tweets that he was tagged in. Len is very clearly in tune with this conversation. And, I love Len. He's one of the people I respect the most. He's incredibly brilliant. He's literally a lawyer. I mean, he's just one of the smartest people ever. I think that there is plenty of room for there to be disagreement, but yet understanding. I understand where Len's coming from. His thought process is Maryland doesn't need to hire Bruce Pearl. And based on what we know, there's probably more stuff we don't know, right? Like, that's the thought process. This is what you know. The more likely scenario is there's other things that you don't know about. Or someone might have been willing to take a fall on a sword to protect Bruce Pearl and got, something along those lines. And I get what he's saying. As I said specifically to Len, the part that we know, you're not going to get it to bother me, related to Bruce Pearl specifically. Specifically, I'm not going to be bothered that he invited Aaron Kraft to a cookout at his house. It's insane that that's a violation. In the same way that Darren Rovell is getting all worked up about Miami boosters paying players, you're not going to get me to get worked up about that. You'll never, ever, ever. And obviously Rovell is clearly showing his ass. But he's done that. He's made a career out of showing his ass. He's never been bothered by it, and he'll tweet out a picture of an ice cream cone at a baseball game, and people will stop caring about this. It's just sort of the Darren Rovell story. You'll never get me to get bothered about anything that involves an athlete, someone who has skills, getting to receive something because of those skills that they have. In the same way that Don McLean probably got a lot of opportunities that the rest of us didn't get because he wrote American Pie. I'm just going to guess that he got invited to some events that Paul and I probably wouldn't be able to get into.
Probably.
There are probably a few cookouts over the years that Don McLean was welcome at that Paul and I would have been turned away at the door. You ain't going to get me to get bothered by it. I am not bothered by Bruce Pearl. I don't care when you say, well, yeah, but these are the rules. They're bad rules. It's like what I feel. You can't get me to care about the girl that wasn't allowed to compete in the Olympics last year because she tested positive for marijuana. It's nonsense. Stop telling me, yeah, but she understood the rules. F that. It's a bad rule. And we should all be willing to step up and say something about it. Every single one of us that has a brain should be able to say, that's a bad rule, and it shouldn't exist, and it shouldn't be breaking the rules. Yeah, but everybody else was competing on the level. Well, no, we know that's not true. I mean, we know that about college basketball. Not everyone else was competing on the level. But 2, fine. And if you were someone who was, I'm sorry that not everybody was competing the same way. But it's a bad rule, and it shouldn't exist. And I can't be worked up about that. I'm not telling you I think Bruce Pearl should be the basketball coach at the University of Maryland. I've got other candidates that I think I like better. I know I like better. There are other people that I think would be a better option for Maryland to hire than Bruce Pearl. But if it ends up being Bruce Pearl for whatever reason, I'm not going to be worked up about it. Len Elmore doesn't want it to be Bruce Pearl, and I get where he's coming from. He wants to say, I think this is a squirrely person. And I don't want someone who has questionable moral judgment or ethical judgment to be someone developing young people. Okay. It's Len Elmore saying it. Len Elmore knows a whole heck of a lot more about that aspect of things than I do. I didn't play high-level college basketball. I was this close. This close. If I had just been like a foot and a half taller, would have really had a chance.
You got the shorts and everything,
right?
Man.
Was there. I mean, I showed up. I had rec specs, the whole 9 yards. That's Len Elmore's opinion, and I respect it. We don't share the same opinion in that it would be a non-starter. It wouldn't be a non-starter for me. I get the point. I think you can do better. I think you can, too. I think Maryland should be able to do better than Bruce Pearl. But if it ends up being Bruce Pearl, I'm not going to, clutch my pearls, pun intended. I'm not going to tell you that I think it's a shame or I think Maryland should be embarrassed. I'm going to say okay. And as long as he doesn't do anything that's actually awful, like really bad things, I'm going to be all right with it. It certainly sparked a lot of conversation last night. Len very much throwing himself in there. I mean, that's respect to Len. Like, he doesn't say something and run away from it. He is responding to just about everybody that disagrees with his opinion. Today's show is also brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today. When we come back in, Patrick Stevens will join us. We'll talk a little bit more about Maryland, a lot more about college hoops in general. That's on the way. It is Glenn Clark Radio. Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Duffy's Garage is a family-owned and operated car care facility in beautiful Baldwin, Maryland. An authorized Maryland inspection station and Napa Pro Care Center with ASE-certified techs. Tell them that Glenn Clark sent you and receive 10% off your service with a max discount of $150. You gotta trust where you take your car, so take it to where I take mine. Duffy's Garage in Baldwin. Duffy'sGarageMD.com.
The latest issue of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special annual Best Of issue. On the cover, we celebrate Justin Tucker as our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, honoring his historic on-field achievements, but also the unprecedented relationship he shared with Baltimore. Inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of 2021, including Cedric Mullins' incredible season and the dominance of local Paralympic athletes. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
The biggest pro wrestling stars today and all time all have one thing in common. You've heard them on Jobbing Out.
Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
The great Kurt Angle.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Matt Riddle.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
The champ, Drew McIntyre.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The great Ron Simmons.
Damn.
Keith Lee.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Bill Goldberg.
My pleasure.
Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mick Foley is with us.
This is the greatest name for a wrestling show I've ever heard.
MJF.
I'm glad you're happy I'm on this show because I'm freaking miserable. Le champion.
Chris Jericho.
Le champion.
AJ, Aaron, Brandon, and Glenn are talking pro wrestling every week on Jobbing Out. Find it at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Stay tuned. Your chance to win $1 million is coming up. Probably not from us. You're listening to Glenn Clark Radio.
Mobile One full synthetic motor oil helps extend engine life. Visit your local Jiffy Lube service center. Ask for Mobile One. John from Little Rock checking in this morning. It's interesting that the Pats started to lose to close the season at the same time Judon disappeared from making plays. Wild. I got to be honest with you, I wasn't paying that close of attention to the Patriots week in and week out. But, I mean, certainly they were better when Matt Judon was flying all over the field and making a big difference. There's no doubt about that. Also said blowouts in the playoffs is nothing new. It's been happening since they started playoffs in the beginning of the league. Yeah, I mean, it's just it is a bummer that's going to be the conversation. It was the conversation yesterday. It'll be the conversation again today because of the totality of it. And it did lead to, Rita sat here yesterday and said to me, this is why you eliminate the 7 seed. I'm not going to agree to that. I'm not going to agree that I think there should be less football. I'm certainly fine with saying right now we don't need there to be an 8th team. And the injury thing, no matter how many teams are in the playoffs, is going to be an issue no matter what for the NFL. No matter how many teams are in the playoffs, you're going to deal with teams that get there and lose players late in the season. You're going to deal with teams that probably would have been there but didn't because they had players get hurt. I mean, that issue is always going to be the biggest prevailing problem for the NFL, and that's sort of the it's the part we don't talk about, which is at this point of the year, it really is about, do you have your players available to you or not? Because if you don't, come on. You're not winning a Super Bowl. There's no question about that. Let's talk some college hoops. This man joins us every Tuesday. You, of course, follow him on Twitter at Discourse, D1S Course. You read his stuff in the Washington Post. He is our friend, Mr. Patrick Stevens, and he's back with us now here on GCR. What's going on, Patrick? How are you, sir?
I am well, and I'm not going to win a Super Bowl either.
Probably not. Going to come up just short. You just couldn't. You couldn't. If only you could have avoided that Achilles tear during the course of the year.
And of course, to bring up other things that have been in the news in the last few weeks, I just don't love football.
Right, that's a good point. You just don't love it enough. God, that's so dumb. All right. Anyway, hey, it looks like you and I both made a mistake on Saturday, and we probably should have been at Hill Fieldhouse.
Yes, I certainly was sitting there thinking, well, you don't see that every day. But in fairness, you don't, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you don't see Maryland lead by double digits at halftime and then lose by double digits happen every day either.
Not every day.
Last time that happened?
When?
The 2001 Final Four.
Oh, God. Oh, you got to bring that up. Jeez, that, of course, being the fame. They had a 22-point lead, if I remember correctly, on Duke at one point in that game, correct?
It was 21 or 22. They were up 11. It was down to 11 at halftime, and then Duke erased the rest of it and won by 11.
Yeah. It's certainly that was not a pleasant memory for most Maryland fans that particular day. I guess let me start with what happened. We were talking about it at the beginning of the show. John reminded me. Yes, the video certainly makes it so there's some discrepancy as to whether Nenda Tark actually got the shot off or not. But whatever, who cares? It was an incredible moment. It was an electric atmosphere. And maybe a reminder that the MEAC is just as kind of wide open as it always is, correct?
I don't know if it's entirely wide open. I think Norfolk State's pretty darn good.
Okay, all right.
And they're off to a 3-0 start. They won the league last year. But that said, there's a reason that you and I embrace the strangeness that is a MEAC Monday.
Yep.
Like, strange things tend to happen in that league, in those games, in those conference games where you just don't know what's going to happen. And, a Coppin walk-off on a 50-foot shot against its biggest rival on the road, that's just par for the course for what you'll see. And an entertaining game, too. I mean, an 84-possession game for those two teams, you don't see that every day from anybody. And so, I certainly am looking forward to the return game at Coppin on March 3rd. Already have that one booked. Thank you very much.
Well, I might try to make sure I can come join you for that one then.
And that's last game of the regular season too. But for right now, Coppin got through non-conference play at 1-14. They played those 15 games in a span of barely more than a month. I'm just kind of doing the math right now. But 15 games in 36 days. And so they come off their pause. They win at South Carolina State. They've won at Morgan State. And now they go down to Norfolk on Saturday. And after that game's done, they get 8 of their last 13 or 8 of their last 11 at home. I'm sorry. My math is 7 of the last 11.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm losing track of the number of games that are being played in that league because you had teams leave at the end of last season. So it's 7 home games in their last 11. And suddenly Coppin very much looks like it might be as good a option alternative Norfolk State as anybody else. So that one on Saturday down at Norfolk, really one of the early big games of the season in the MEAC.
The teams that we've been talking about for the most part these last couple of weeks, Patrick, kind of continue to roll along. I know Navy did take a loss, but they bounced back with a really nice win over BU. Loyola just keeps figuring out ways to win, and Towson looked really good yesterday.
We'll start with Navy since you bring them up first. You're right. They didn't play great against Colgate. They got beat up on the interior, and they bounced back to complete the season sweep of Boston University. So a big week coming up for the Mids. They get Lehigh at home on Wednesday, Army at home on Saturday. Those two teams are both 4-2 in the Patriot League and tied for third. So that's an opportunity for some separation between at least third and fourth place in the conference. When you're looking at that Navy-Loyola thing, they don't actually play for the first time until February 5th, and then they play twice in the span of less than 3 weeks. You mentioned Loyola as well, a team that after that overtime loss coming off its pause up at Army has figured out ways to win. It hasn't always been pretty.
Yep.
Even the last 2 games, Lafayette, they won by 14, but that required a 12-0 run late to bust it back open. And then Sunday, on the sort of surprise nationally televised game that got moved into a TV slot in the evening, they were down and didn't play particularly well in the first half. They played a fantastic second half. I think it was 23 points in the first half and 46 in the second half.
Shoo.
And, at that level, we talk about all the time, do you have veteran guards? And for Loyola, Cam Spencer and Jalen Andrews, a backcourt that basically is the one carrying, they're the ones driving the bus. And Kenneth Jones is a factor in that too. So you look at them, they've got that veteran guard play. And maybe it's possible at this point, as you look at them, they're 5-1, a third of the way through league play. Maybe they're able to finish the job this year after making that surprise run to the Patriot League tournament last year. And by the way, worth mentioning, they're at home twice this week too. They've got BU on Wednesday and then American for the first time this season on Saturday. And then Towson's 13-5. They've won 4 in a row. And they just keep finding interesting ways to win. By the way, they've won their last 3 games without Terry Nolan Jr.
Yeah.
And they beat Hofstra and then swept Elon and William and Mary on the road. And now 5 of the next 6 home for the Tigers starting Thursday against College of Charleston. And then league leader William and UNC Wilmington comes in on Saturday. So this Towson team continues to share the ball really well. Last night was fabulous. They put up 91 points on William and Mary. And, there's a lot to like there about that deep team that has a lot of answers. Jason Gibson's been playing well. Like Cam Holton might be, if you want to sit there and make a list of guys that could win CAA Player of the Year, he's got to be near the top of the list at this point. So I really, really like them and looking forward to seeing them a couple times here in the next couple weeks before they finish. They finish with 5 of their last 7 on the road. So kind of a tough finish here. But for now, they have an opportunity with 5 of the next 6 at home between now and the end of the month to really make some hay and perhaps even take the lead in the conference.
He is Patrick Stevens. He is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio, as he is every Tuesday. Patrick, is there anything that's actually worth discussing in relation to Maryland? I know they play again tonight at Michigan, and I hate to be utterly dismissive of it, but we talked about this a week ago. There's just not really a lot there to discuss. They certainly played a nice first half against Rutgers on Saturday.
They did play a nice first half, and credit to them. They applied some pressure then. Rutgers handled it better in the second half, and Rutgers started making some shots in the second half too, at least a little bit more anyway. The other thing that Rutgers quit doing was fouling Maryland. When you look at what Maryland was able to do foul line-wise, they got to the foul line 15 times in the first half, 4 times in the second half. I mean, some of that comes down to your opponent figuring things out. I will say the one interesting thing that I'll take away from that game, Julian Reese drawing his first career start. He had 6 offensive rebounds, and we saw a lot of what we've come to kind of expect from him in his freshman year, which is a lot of activity. He's very energetic. There are not errors of omission that are being committed there. He is, prone to fouling, but obviously he's got to put some strength on, which is, a common issue for freshmen at the college level, and he'll do that. But I think it's smart, frankly, for them, whether it was intended this way or not, to give him a longer look. I mean, he played almost twice as much time as Kadus Wahab did on Saturday and was very effective, 9 points and 7 rebounds. Probably a couple shots that he'd like to have back. But I think that's an encouraging sign for them amidst what was an otherwise pretty dreary Saturday. That Reese is a guy that I think that they could continue to build around. And perhaps whether it's, in all likelihood, it's going to be another coach, another staff coming in. I think that's a guy that you want to be able to keep around for the long term. And the more that he develops and the more that you keep him happy, maybe the more likely he is to stay.
Can you explain to me why someone would choose to transfer to the University of Maryland right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a recruiting guy.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, the guy that has already spent a year at Texas A&M and has committed and then left TCU before practice even started. I mean, frankly, and I don't know really anything about the guy, but I would expect. I have a hard time believing that guy is likely to be around come September.
Yeah.
Just under the circumstances, it has nothing to do with him and everything to do with the new staff. I mean, I understand why, if you are a Maryland assistant coach or if you're Danny Manning right now, why you're continuing to recruit.
You're trying to use it to sell the idea that you can be the basketball coach.
I mean,
Right.
and you don't want to be completely derelict either. You're getting compensated, and that's part of your job. But for right now, like I don't see why anybody who is a player or even a high school player at this point is jumping on that bandwagon right now. I think anybody would be saying, well, let's see who gets hired as the head coach,
and then we'll
March,
decide.
and go
Yeah.
from there and have the conversation then. So that I don't know if I put a whole lot of weight in that commitment.
Yeah, I mean, the Cassius McNeely is the young man we're talking about, and yes, I certainly don't. It was very weird. Is all it was.
I certainly was scratching my head over that too.
No doubt. Patrick, on the national front, who really is the best team in the country right now? Baylor loses a couple of games. There seems to be sort of a debate about whether it's Gonzaga or Auburn. Gonzaga slightly ahead in the poll this week, but have we reached that point in the season where we just sort of genuinely don't know who the best team is at this point?
Yeah, and I don't think it really matters that much at this stage. That's why you have a 68-team tournament. I mean, not that determines the best team per se. We have conversations about who the best team in the country is in a sport that, because of a single elimination format, is more likely to not produce a champion that is the best team. I mean, how many times have we said that the best team didn't win in a season? So I think that Baylor, Gonzaga, I still like Purdue a lot, at least as an offensive team. Defensively, they do kind of give you pause. Auburn's in that mix too, and there's always a chance that there's somebody else that either hasn't gotten a ton of games in, hasn't gotten enough continuity to kind of figure things out, like a UCLA, or a team that maybe didn't do a whole lot early on, but has started to really figure things out. And the team that comes to mind on that front is Kentucky with what they did.
Okay. Yeah.
They've got some dudes too, and they've got some older dudes too. So I think there's a lot of options, and we're still just barely past the halfway point of the regular season. So if people want to have that conversation, they can. That's not one I'm going to get myself too excited.
I certainly understand that. I think the conversation maybe was worth having. Do you think we're going to see more like what we saw yesterday with Notre Dame and Howard? Do you think that could become maybe like a tradition for a network to try to pull a game off like that over the years on MLK Day?
Well, I will say this, and it's not necessarily tied to MLK Day, but the Pac-12 has actually reached an agreement with the SWAC for over the next 4 years where teams will play home and homes with each other.
Okay, all right.
So you have 6 home and homes that begin next year. I believe 3 of them are in SWAC arenas and 3 of them in Pac-12 arenas, and then they switch over the next year, and then the other teams in that league, both leagues have 12 teams, so everybody in the conference will be involved in that over a 4-year span. So that's good. Howard has tried to have a high-profile opponent from their perspective. Understand, that's a really good academic institution, and they view, especially a guy like Kenny Blakey, who's got the DeMatha thing, went to Duke, has worked at Harvard and Columbia, really values having those peer institutions on his schedule. So you go back and look that they've played Harvard and Yale on MLK Day as well. So it would not surprise me, if you saw maybe a couple other schools. Think of it kind of like the Veterans Classic, where you had maybe that early burst of great teams, and then it became a little bit harder to fill out the field with those Final Four type teams. But there's still good programs coming in. So it wouldn't shock me if we saw a few more of those types of teams that were willing to come in and play a game like that. I think about Michigan coming to D.C. to play Prairie View on a neutral floor. If they're willing to do that, it might not be that much of a stretch for them to come and play Howard on an MLK Day. That's a pulled out of whole cloth type of example. Like they definitely did do the Prairie View game, but I don't know whether they'd be interested or not. But clearly Howard has an interest in being able to play an MLK game against a high-profile brand name opponent from the academic side. And so I think that with Fox having some interest in that, obviously the game itself was entertaining yesterday, so that helped too. It helps immensely that game was a 3-point game and not a 25-point game.
And unique, of course, given Mike Bray's connection to the area, obviously, right?
And Mike Bray has known Kenny Blakey for since the '80s, basically. I talked to Mike Bray about this before, right after Blakey was hired, and he basically rattled off Blakey's home address when he was growing up.
Oh, wow.
He said something Missouri Avenue. I can't remember the number, but he most definitely remembered the number after all these years, 3 decades
Wow.
or whatnot.
Wow.
So that and Bray's a guy that has always shown a willingness to go play games on the road against teams coached by his former assistants. Like he did the same thing at Delaware when they hired Martin Ingolstadt. So I think that was a variable in there for sure. Now, can they find somebody else? I suspect that they probably can. I don't know if the list is super long. I don't know if you're going to see like a team on the West Coast come all the way
Sure.
east to do that,
Sure.
especially since you have that arrangement with the SWAC in the Pac-12. But I can totally see this thing continuing to grow here, especially if you have the TV component and you have the competitive component, it works out pretty well, I think. And I think that with those two things kind of squared away at this stage, Howard's in a position to continue to grow this thing and perhaps bring in more opponents here in the years to come.
All right, it's time for our game. Can Patrick Stevens name the MLB teams that this particular player played for? Again, we're getting the nitty-gritty, although I think this is a pretty representative one for our 5-team guy. It's actually a 7-team guy.
Oh, boy.
Who was a 2-time All-Star, 2 times finished in the top 10 of Cy Young voting, once finished in the top 10 of MVP voting, had a 20-win season, and led the league with a number that I don't think we're going to see again, 15 complete games in 1988. 7 teams for Danny Jackson.
Danny Jackson. All right. Well, he was definitely a Cincinnati Red.
Of course he was. That was where he had that monster season.
And he was definitely a Kansas City Royal.
Most certainly before Cincinnati is where he began his career. So you've knocked out 8 seasons, but there are actually still 3 multi-year stops left on the list.
Well, one of them's Philadelphia.
Yes, of course.
So we've basically closed out his entire career through 1994 or so.
There actually was a stop there were 2 stops between Cincinnati and Philadelphia.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. I don't think I certainly did not remember those.
He spent 1991 and 92 in one place and then was dealt in 92 somewhere else.
Dealt in 92 to somewhere else. Well, was he, let's see here. Where would Danny Jackson have been in those years? Am I remembering him as a Brave at some point?
Not a Brave, no.
He was not a Brave. Okay. Well, so much for that idea. Let's see. Where else would he have been? He was a Cub, wasn't he?
He was most certainly a Cub. That was where he went after Cincinnati. He spent 91 and then part of 92 with the Cubs.
Okay. So 92, there's a half-decent chance that second stop there was a playoff team or close to a playoff team in that particular year. And then there's a stop at the end or a couple stops at the end.
Yeah, he spent 95 and 96 and into 97. He actually spent part of 3 seasons somewhere, and then the tail end of 97 he ended up it was not good at that point.
Well, was he a Pirate?
Yes, that was where he went in 92. That was the playoff team you were looking for.
Okay.
That was what you're looking for. And by the way, you've stolen money now. You've gotten 5 and you still have another guess to go. This is a wild success on Danny Jackson.
It most certainly is. The tail end for Danny Jackson.
Yeah, and it's bad. He spent these 3 seasons in one place. He was 4-15 with a 5.78 ERA.
Oof.
In 27 starts.
In 27 starts. Wow. I'm feeling like that's not right. I'll throw one out there, even though I'm not 100% sure this is right. But the Marlins, was he there at the end?
No, it wasn't the Marlins. No, but 5 of 7 on Danny Jackson is pretty damn good, sir. St. Louis for
okay.
95, 96, 97. Then he made a cameo in San Diego to end the 97 season. So pretty damn good. That being said, I'll give you one more. And a man, an incredibly accomplished player, maybe an argument. Probably not Hall of Fame, but there's probably more of an argument than we want to talk about. 3-time All-Star, 2-time MVP, 2 times led the league in home runs, and a 6-time Silver Slugger Award winner. They call him Juan Gonzalez, 4 teams.
He was a Texas Ranger.
Obviously for the bulk.
He was a Cleveland Indian.
Spent 2 seasons there, and now this.
Now it gets dicey.
Yeah.
He was a Detroit Tiger.
He most certainly was. He made a 33-game stop somewhere in 2004.
A 33-game stop. Was he, and I am pulling this, I vaguely recall him as a Royal at the
Oh,
end.
my God. How do you remember Juan Gonzalez as a Kansas City Royal? I cannot believe that. Well, damn done,
Well, he wasn't
sir.
going to go play in the National League.
Yeah, at that point,
so
no
that
doubt
does
about
narrow
it. Yeah,
down a
no
little bit.
no chance he could have patrolled the outfield anywhere at that point. Man, well done. All right, Patrick Stevens, what's on the docket for you this week?
I'll be home tonight, but haven't settled on tomorrow's visit just yet. We'll sort that out by the end of the day. Going to Towson to see them play Charleston on Thursday. Maryland and Illinois for whatever reason on Friday.
Yuck.
Army Navy on Saturday.
Yeah,
looking like a good choice right now. And Mount St. Mary's in Central Connecticut on Sunday. And I will make my way to Coppin, see the Eagles for the first time on Monday. They have Howard in town.
Might be
so
a time
very
for me
busy
to,
week.
Let's talk about that. That might be one I can join you for on Monday night. And by the way, for those that don't know, they do a really cool thing for the Army Navy. They're in Annapolis on Saturday. They'll play the women's game at 11, then the men's game at 1:30, both of which will be on national TV. So kind of a cool thing that they do for that. At Discourse, D1S Course on Twitter. That's where you follow in the Washington Post. Patrick Stevens, always appreciate you, my friend. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Sounds great. Take care, Glenn.
Patrick Stevens joining us as he does every week for our college basketball conversation. Today's show also brought to you by Glory Days Grill. The Comfort Classics are available on their seasonal menu, including the house-made meatloaf, the grilled meatloaf sandwich, as well as the smoky thigh wings with the Alabama barbecue sauce, which are sublime. Nick Kelly knows. Nick Kelly and I have talked a lot about the smoky thigh wings. They're so freaking good, man. I don't need regular wings back as long as I have the smoky thigh wings at Glory Days Grill. GloryDaysGrill.com to get your order in now and have it for lunch or have it later tonight for dinner. GloryDaysGrill.com. We come back in. We're going to chat about Lamar Jackson, his contract situation, his future, try to really get to the bottom of it. Andrew Brandt is a man who knows a thing or two. He dealt with some pretty high-profile quarterbacks in Green Bay. He had to do some deals with the likes of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Now he's with SI. We'll talk to Andrew Brandt next. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The latest issue of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special annual Best of issue. On the cover, we celebrate Justin Tucker as our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, honoring his historic on-field achievements, but also the unprecedented relationship he shared with Baltimore. Inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of 2021, including Cedric Mullins' incredible season and the dominance of local Paralympic athletes. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
Need to hone your computer skills to boost your career? Or maybe you want an IT certification. CCBC Continuing Education has the courses and programs you need for a career in the computer field. And it's all tuition free. From the basics to specialized training, we have the classes you need, from hardware to programming to cybersecurity, and so much more. It's your choice. It's your career. Call 443-840-4700 or visit ccbcmd.edu/computer training.
Window Depot Baltimore provides the highest quality Pro Via windows, doors, and siding for all budgets. The best is finally affordable. Call them today for a free in-home consultation at 410-941-3499. They also offer Zoom and FaceTime consultations in an effort to practice social distancing. A proud sponsor of the Tyus Bowser Show, you can find out more at WindowDepotBaltimore.com.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a wide range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Toyota to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
If you miss anything, don't forget that you can find whole shows later on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Podcasts. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
Back in here on GCR, a Tuesday edition of the program. We are brought to you today by our friends at Underdog Fantasy Football. Don't be like me. Don't miss when you play your Underdog Fantasy Football bet. I missed on mine this weekend, but that's all right. I'll make another one next weekend. And KZ's putting up his picks seemingly every day, trying to help you out and winning some money related to Underdog Fantasy Football. And they've got money that they just want to give you, frankly, because they are willing to do things like put out a 1-yard prop for Stephon Diggs. If I could have just, not been an idiot in what I paired it with, I would have gotten basically free money. That's what you can do. They do it every week. You just got to be checking at UnderdogFantasy.com or on the app. On top of that, they're giving you free money to play with. So you make your first deposit, you use the code PRESSBOX, and they'll match it up to $100 with free money for you to play with. UnderdogFantasy.com, download the Underdog app, use that code PRESSBOX when you sign up. We know it's frustrating that we can't bet on our phone, we can't bet on the computer in the state of Maryland. That's annoying. I get it. I completely understand. But playing Underdog Fantasy Football has a lot of similarities to being able to bet, and you can do it on your phone or on your computer. Play those player props, put together some parlays, have fun playing Underdog Fantasy Football. And it's not just like it doesn't end because football season's ending. They got basketball, they got hockey. If we ever get around to playing baseball, which would be a really nice thing, it'd be swell if we do, that will be an option as well with Underdog Fantasy Football. Go sign up right now. All right, we had to do this a little bit earlier on today because of his podcasting schedule. But I wrote a column yesterday about Lamar Jackson, and I wanted to run some of the thoughts by someone who knows a thing or two about doing quarterback deals. Andrew Brandt is that guy from SI, and he joined us right here on GCR.
We're joined now here on GCR by a longtime NFL executive. Now, of course, you hear his podcast and you read his stuff at SI. It's a pleasure to welcome back to the program Mr. Andrew Brandt, who's with us now. Andrew, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's been a while. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
You got it, Glenn. Good to be with you.
Andrew, I know you're probably getting hit up all over the place about the Packers. We are, of course, in the throes here in Baltimore of Lamar Jackson conversation. And I know you wrote about Lamar last year and him not having an agent and what that does for conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to dive a little bit further into it, where the Ravens are needing to get a deal done, presumably wanting to get a deal done with Lamar Jackson, and why you think it may or may not get done during the course of this offseason. What does your gut tell you about Lamar Jackson's status with the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, I think we got to go back to this past offseason. He came off a great year, and there were 3 quarterbacks in that class of 2018 that we, including me, expected to get big extensions. Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, and Josh Allen. And as we all know, only one of the 3 got the extension. And we can save Baker Mayfield for another day. But it was curious that the Ravens did not extend Jackson. I just didn't understand exactly where the lack of extension was coming from, meaning, is it coming from the Ravens who are not ready to commit, who didn't even offer a deal or offered a deal that was not pleasing to the Jackson side? Or is it coming from the Jackson side where they think it's better to wait and continue to see the market go up and up and up and jump into negotiations now? Now we come to a junction where there hasn't been excellent performance due to injury as much as anything. And what do? I mean, I guess to spin to the end of the chapter, I guess my prediction is they don't do anything. They still have a year left. It's an option year, and that's the advantage of first-round quarterbacks, that you can exercise the option after year 3. You can watch and learn in year 4, and you don't have to sink the huge guaranteed money in year 5.
Let me propose something, as we talked about this on our show yesterday, Andrew. Yeah. If let's just say what's what the Ravens wanted to do is sort of say, why don't you go out and prove it in year 5? You know, and to your point, they still, of course, have the leverage because of the franchise tag afterwards. If you were in Lamar Jackson's camp, and this is very difficult for us because, you know, as you know, reporters like to have agents to be sources of information here. Why wouldn't you say, nah, we'd rather not? Why don't you go ahead and trade us when you look at the quarterback market and just how many teams around the NFL are almost in desperate straits when it comes to the quarterback position right now?
Well, a couple things. First of all, it's going to be an active year for veteran quarterbacks. You know, it's a whole nother discussion with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo and maybe others. So you have that. It's not going to be people beating down the doors for one veteran quarterback, maybe Aaron, but no one else. And it's a tough year to do that. The other part of this is, of course, having been an agent, you know, you only have that card once in your career, really, right? The card of, hey, you're not going to pay me, trade me. And that's a hard thing to walk back from. And I don't think that's going to happen. You know, people talk about franchise tag. You know, players, they all play. They all play under the tag, and they get through it. I guess I just think, you know, this idea that players are unhappy without contracts while making tens of millions of dollars is not something teams take too seriously, to be truthful.
He is Andrew Brandt. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Andrew, understand exactly what you're saying. It feels like a weird conversation, right? Because you point out the comparison to Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. We're talking about Lamar Jackson here. We're talking about a unanimous MVP of the league. We're talking about someone who pretty much single-handedly saved John Harbaugh's job a few years ago, and you know, at a point where it very much looked like John Harbaugh was going to be out in Baltimore. We're talking about a player who, while yes, you know, had a 4-week stretch there against the Blitz that struggled and then got hurt. In the weeks leading up to that, he was a leading MVP candidate this season before that happened. Like it feels to me like it's almost the word I keep coming back to is disrespectful to say, hey, we want you to prove it. We want you to go back out there and do it for another year. Like what? This is Lamar Jackson. This is one of the most unique athletes in the history of football. What more really can he prove that he doesn't already deserve to be taken care of and given this type of deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, I guess people out there have mixed opinions of Jackson, and that may be within the front office of the Ravens. I just think a couple things. One, in negotiations, teams get in trouble when they pay for past performance rather than future. So if you're judging how you're going to pay Lamar Jackson, you look forward, not backwards. And I understand that's harsh because you say, hey, he's been MVP, but is he going to MVP going forward? Is he going to have that kind of production? That's what they're weighing. And the other thing is you just never know with contracts and performance and what you're going to be able to do contract-wise. I think the problem for Mayfield and Jackson is this. There are no medium contracts anymore for quarterbacks.
Right.
Unless it's like an Andy Dalton or a Nick Foles. So they're either on rookie deals or they're making $30 million a year. And I've talked to team executives about this, not at the Ravens, but it's like, what do we do? You know, because no ascending quarterback is going to take $15, $20 million a year.
Correct.
They're just not.
Right.
And I understand it. So that's the dilemma.
Andrew, what would you do, right? If you were the Baltimore Ravens, if you were in the shoes of Eric DeCosta right now, would you have trepidation about signing Lamar Jackson for that type of money?
Well, the devil's in the details. I mean, people know from my Twitter and my articles, my podcasts, my writings, that a lot of these deals are not cracked up what they're cracked up to be. And I don't know. I guess if you can get a deal you're comfortable with, that you can get out, which is how teams look at these deals. Can I get out after 2 years of guaranteed money, something like that? Then you look at it. But you try to have professional and open and honest communication while not upsetting the player if you're going to continue to evaluate and pay him on the option year. I mean, that's probably the most prudent thing to do, is not pay him. But I understand what you talk about and what fans talk about with the emotional element to this as well. And I get it. Lamar's probably saying, well, you don't feel the way the Buffalo Bills feel about Josh Allen towards me?
Right.
That's a question, yeah.
Well, can I go a step further? Can I say, is an organization better if you're going to pay Lamar Jackson at some point, right? Like if you are going to pay him a year from now, is there an argument to it being better off that you pay him now just to get a more clear picture of what the next few years are going to look like cap-wise and to be able to make decisions based on what you know those numbers are now going to be?
Well, you make that argument like a year ago.
Fair. I mean, that's fair. Sure.
I would have made that argument a year ago, but they didn't. And quarterback contracts tend to only go up if you're at that level. Now, Mayfield, we all thought, okay, they're not doing a deal. The price is going to go way up. And now people are thinking, wow, the Browns got away with not doing a deal. That was good for them. I don't think people feel that way about the Ravens and Jackson, but yeah, I mean, it's great to have a young ascending quarterback under contract. We don't know what's going into their thinking, why it's not happening.
It's interesting, Andrew. Like I guess the comparison to Baker Mayfield is tricky for me, right? Because like I think Baker Mayfield, we're all coming around to the idea now that he's simply not a franchise quarterback, right? Like or this level, this upper level of quarterbacks. Whereas I just don't know any reason to think that wouldn't be. Again, I get it. It was a tough 4 weeks and there was an injury. But at the midway point of this season, Lamar Jackson looked like an MVP of the league, right? Like I guess I'm struggling with the comparison between Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield specifically.
Yeah, I can see that, and probably the Ravens are struggling with the comparison between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and maybe that's what's holding this up. The other part of this, I keep saying devil in the details, and as I've negotiated on both sides, there's two types of contracts out there now for young quarterbacks. And if I were a player, I'd want the Dak Prescott type, which is 4 years, $40 million. And the best thing about that is the 4 years. So he's going to get another bite at the apple at age 29, 30. Whereas Mahomes and Allen are 8 or 10 or 12-year deals, which basically take them off the free agent market forever. And the teams are locked in. So I don't know if the Ravens are trying to push those kind of long-term deals, and Jackson doesn't want that. If I were representing Jackson, I would not want that Allen-Mahomes length. That only serves the team. I would want the Prescott length, and maybe that's a sticking point.
Just another minute or two here with Andrew Brandt on GCR. Andrew, is there an unspoken part of this that's about the style of play from Lamar Jackson that, like, the Ravens push, they redid their entire offense to want Lamar Jackson to run more, but how much does that impact these conversations in this sort of old way of thinking that if you're a mobile quarterback, you're more likely to get hurt, despite the fact that we've kind of got the statistics at this point that says that's not really true?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a team point of view, that's not an issue now, but it could be an issue with longevity.
Okay.
So there you would talk about what's the out. You know, where's the point where the team could get out without a massive cap hit, without future guarantees? How do you structure the deal? all those kind of things. That's what goes into that thinking.
And then last one for you. What do you say to someone who says, I would never pay this type of money to any player? Like, this is just a bad way to go about building a roster. I don't care who you are. You're going to hamstring your ability to compete and to put more good players on the field whenever you give this high a percentage of your salary cap to any player.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I managed a cap for 10 years, always had the highest paid player in the league, or one of them with Brett Favre, and then we did Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's a cop-out. I can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a $200 million cap. If you allocate $30 million to your quarterback, you have $170 million to the rest of your team. You have half your team on rookie contracts. I just think it's a cop-out. I don't think, Tom Brady's making the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes might make the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers might make the Super Bowl. Drew Brees should have made the Super Bowl a couple more times. I don't get that. I think it's a cop-out. Now, if you don't have the player, that's a different story.
Right.
But yeah, it's a cop-out. The cap thing I think is put out there in the media by teams looking for excuses more than anything else.
To your point, you can't pay that money and get Jared Goff at the end of the day, right?
Exactly.
You have a huge problem. And look, somebody will compare it to the Joe Flacco situation in Baltimore with they give a pass to the Ravens in that process, whose drafting was horrendous after they paid Joe Flacco money. Like you have to hit on your draft picks at that point because you can't afford to go out and sign big-name players to make up for it, which is part of the problem. Andrew Brandt, what can I plug for you? Podcast-wise, what's coming up in your world? What plugs can I get in for you?
Yeah, of course, the podcast, The Business of Sports. I do my column at Sports Illustrated, Business of Football, every week. I've started this newsletter now, which is doing really well. For people to sign up, they go to andrew-brandt.com. And on there, you can actually sign up for premium content where I do lectures and daily updates for all the people. So go to andrew-brandt.com, newsletter, and then the Sports Business League there as well.
At Andrew Brandt on Twitter is how you follow him. Andrew, truly appreciate you squeezing in a few minutes with us this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time.
You got it, Glenn.
That's Andrew Brandt joining us here on GCR. Hey, quickly, if you missed it, Stan the Fan and Ross Grimsley caught up last night with the great Jim Palmer, and that conversation is available right now in the videos tab at facebook.com/PressBoxSports or by going to PressBoxOnline.com/video. And Stan and Gary Stein are going to have a really special conversation this week. I don't know if you all are familiar with the story of Yeshiva basketball. It is a power, at the D3 level, but as a Jewish program, a Jewish basketball program. It's a really incredible story. They were the number one team in the country. They did, however, just drop a game to Illinois Wesleyan, but really remarkable what it is that they've been doing. And Stan and Gary are going to catch up with their head coach, Elliot Steinmetz, this week as well. So those shows, facebook.com/PressBoxSports. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that Andrew Brandt had to say, because there's a lot in there, right? And some of it was sort of that table was set with a seeming trepidation about whether or not the Ravens are going to do a deal this offseason with Lamar Jackson, essentially saying, well, look, if they didn't do it last year, why would they do it now? It's not a scenario where Lamar Jackson was so effing brilliant this season that the cost is just getting worse and worse and you feel like you have to. What changed during the course of this year that if you couldn't get a deal done last year, now you have to get a deal done? And it's not an unreasonable question. Although I would say that I guess there would be two mitigating factors. One being, well, hey, for the beginning of the season, the only reason you were good at all was because of Lamar Jackson. And at the end of the year, you saw just how bad you were without Lamar Jackson. So while, yes, the totality of the year might be drawn up as some bit of a negative in relation to Lamar Jackson, on the whole, I still think this season was more evidence of why you need more Lamar Jackson, far more than it was evidence of maybe there's some sort of question about Lamar Jackson. Let's combine that with his dismissiveness to my premise, which is, look, if I'm Lamar Jackson and you come to me and you say, we think you need to go out and prove it next year, I'm going to give you the middle finger. I'm going to say, trade me, because I'm Lamar Jackson. And Andrew Brandt was fairly dismissive of that. Hey, look, teams don't. Hell, the Green Bay Packers didn't do that with Aaron Rodgers last year, right? Like, to some extent, there is truth to the idea of, well, we still hold the leverage. We know you're not going to skip games, so if you want to be mad, be mad. You know, if you want to say mean things about us, say mean things about us, but at the end of the day, we're going to do what's best for business for us, and what's best for business for us is to get another year, figure out where we are, think a little bit more about what we want the deal to look like based on what you think the terms should be, so we just don't care if you're pissed off. If you're pissed off, be pissed off. We didn't have you in training camp for the most part last year. You had COVID. Training camp's not that big of a deal to us. You don't want to come to training camp? Fine. We'll live. Is that a good thing for the Baltimore Ravens to do? Probably not. But I could understand if they said, we're not going to live in fear of that. Just go ahead and say you're mad and let it be awkward. It was so awkward in Green Bay that they're getting set to host a divisional round game. That's how awkward it was. Now, that, of course, being it's Aaron Rodgers, nearly 40 years old, versus Lamar Jackson. I'm still not I'd still be surprised that the Ravens didn't get something done with Lamar Jackson, personally. I just don't see the benefit. I don't see what the benefit is at all to anybody, right? Like, I don't know how much more Lamar Jackson can prove his value. On the flip side, I don't think there's any world in which that price is getting less. Like, somebody would, to his point about Baker Mayfield, well, now they kind of look brilliant for not doing a long-term deal. Yeah, because now it looks like you don't want a deal at all. Baker Mayfield was a question mark going into last season. Lamar Jackson wasn't. The comparison between Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson falls flat. It was never a consensus that Baker Mayfield was a high-level quarterback in this league. No one. There were moments where he looked really good. And there's certainly the fear in Cleveland of, well, if we don't have Baker Mayfield, what do we have? Because we've never had even a good quarterback. But Baker Mayfield was never a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the National Football League at any point. Ever. There has never been a conversation about that. So the idea of, that sort of being a blueprint, right, that you could end up doing a deal and then feeling really silly. If the Browns had done a deal with Baker Mayfield last offseason, wouldn't they feel silly now? That's true. That's true. Because it's Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield ain't Lamar Jackson. It doesn't seem that it should be so hard to figure that out. It still feels like there is a reluctance among some to accept anything that Lamar Jackson has done because of the style in which he plays, because of whatever reason, because of how you scouted him to begin with, because he wasn't the number 1 overall pick, whatever that reason might be. And because of that, any small sliver of evidence that suggests anything other than he's, one of the best quarterbacks in all of football, you want to jump on that and say, well, but. I promise you, the majority of high-level quarterbacks have had bad games. I know it doesn't feel like Tom Brady has ever had a bad game, but even he has had bad games. Even Aaron Rodgers has had bad games.
Peyton Manning threw 6 interceptions in a game once.
And that's the highest level. I mean, I'm the next level, the Dak Prescotts of the world, even those guys have bad games. Justin Herbert has bad games. Josh Allen's had bad games. There are bad games. And yes, it was concerning that it all came at a time where Lamar Jackson was specifically facing the blitz over and the zero coverage thing over and over and over again. But the notion that rewrites who Lamar Jackson is as a quarterback, absurd. It's absurd.
One of the things that Andrew said during that interview was you'd rather have the quarterbacks should rather have the 4-year, $40 million per deal that Dak Prescott had rather than the Allen and Mahomes deal. But didn't you have a guy on? I remember being in here over the summer When they were talking about the Mahomes,
well, I think he's talking about it.
5-year
He was talking about it for the. Well, okay. So there's two things. One, he was talking about it from the player perspective.
Right.
From player perspective, why in the world would you do a 10-year deal? Give yourself that ability, right?
Right.
To your point, yes, the way that the Mahomes deal was structured, there's going to be the ability to walk in there after a certain amount of time. I don't remember exactly what it was, and say, here's where quarterback contracts have gone. Here's where yours is. We can fix this. And given what Patrick Mahomes means to the Kansas City Chiefs, they probably will. It's when we have these conversations, it feels more like we're talking about these doomsday scenarios where like someone just utterly and completely like falls off a cliff somehow. And it's just so absurd. I get the problem, and I alluded to it at the end. The problem is you pay Jared Goff major money to be your quarterback, and you realize, oh, crap, he's just not that guy.
Right.
We paid for something we can't get. We can't recoup that. That becomes a problem. There is no world in which Lamar Jackson is Jared Goff. He's just not. I understand apprehensiveness about paying, anybody a certain amount of money. We kind of talked about that. It's just this is how this works. Andrew Brandt said it. We'd love for there to be a mid-range for quarterbacks. It'd be neat if, once a quarterback set the market, that didn't mean every quarterback had to get that type of money. But it's just not how the system works. The system works very clearly. It doesn't matter if you're the best or the 8th best quarterback in the league. Are you a franchise-level NFL quarterback? If you are, then this is the amount of money you have to get paid. To his point that you'd like to structure the deal where you have some flexibility a couple years in, to some extent, that's probably smart with anybody that you sign, right? Like, I don't think that's any more necessary for Lamar Jackson than it would be for Justin Herbert or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. Any of those guys could be seriously impacted by one injury and never be the same player again after that. Any of them could. There is no more need for Lamar Jackson to be in that type of situation than any of those other players. Whatever deal you'd be willing to do with Joe Burrow, you should be willing to do with Lamar Jackson. Or he never should have been your quarterback to begin with.
And the people that are apprehensive about spending big money on a quarterback, and I know that a lot of fans around here look back to Joe Flacco and they blame that for the loss of Anquan Bolden, which was not the case. You and I both know that's not the case.
It's nonsense.
Remember what it was like when you didn't have a quarterback.
Man, it really is as simplistic as that to me whenever we have these conversations. And again, we're having a more nuanced conversation because the point he's making is not just not having quarterback. It's, well, you can just wait a year. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, you could. You could wait a year. But for what exactly? What exactly are you waiting a year for? Because you want to feel, but it's the guarantee fairy, right? Like, I want my daughter to be missing. I want it on the box. I want a guarantee on the box. Does 1 year guarantee anything?
And if Lamar Jackson comes out and plays like the MVP next year, maybe he's asking you for $50 million.
Right, but the number is more than
year.
Patrick Mahomes' number or something like that. And it might be that that's part of the problem. Is that's what he's asking for now, right? Like, that might be the issue. But whatever it is, the quarterback market is essentially set. And if his ask is so much more extraordinary than that, then you sort of, it's what maybe you say, look, we're not doing that. You would probably have planted that by now, right? If that really was what the problem was, at some point you would have leaked to the media, look, you want to know what the problem is? Jackson's asking for $75 million. He's asking for something that is astronomically more than any quarterback has ever gotten paid. Mm. You guys need to know that when you have this conversation. If that was the case, I almost guarantee we would know it at this point. Because a team would know that makes the player look bad, we come out on top, right? I almost guarantee we would have found out that type of information. But short of that, there's the number, pay it or don't. There is just no benefit to me of waiting another year at this point. You wanted to wait last year because you didn't have to and whatever, right? Like, it's one more year that you could get a little bit of flexibility in before you started getting the numbers bigger. That's fine. But at this point, there is nothing to be gained by waiting any longer. Other than, and I say that There's nothing to be gained, and there could be some risk that you start to have a fracture in your relationship with your franchise player who doesn't understand why it is that Josh Allen gets a deal, but he doesn't.
There's not a doubt in my mind that something's getting done this summer.
I mean, it's probably wrong for me because I don't know anything, right? I don't have – I just – the Ravens aren't talking about it, and we just don't know who to talk to in Lamar Jackson's camp. So I can't say there's no doubt in my mind because I just don't know any inside information. I just don't think it makes any sense. It makes no sense to me to not get this squared away as soon as you possibly can, whatever that ends up looking like. All right, today's show also brought to you by CCBC. I always use these words, tuition free. If you need to hone your computer skills to boost your career, or maybe you want an IT certification, CCBC Continuing Education has the courses and programs you need for a career in the computer field, and it's all tuition free. From the basics to specialized training, we have the classes you need, from hardware to programming to cybersecurity and so much more. It's your choice. It's your career. Call 443-840-4700 or visit ccbcmd.edu/computer training. Well. This is surreal. Oh, who's calling me? Somebody's calling me. 814. Oh, it's potential spam. We're not going to talk. This is pretty surreal, man. I want to tell you that this was prearranged, and this is part of him doing a lot of publicity right now, so we actually had to record this before the show today. And I'll also tell you that, unfortunately, Don's cell phone was not great, so I had to – the audio it's fine. You're going to hear everything just fine. I just don't – me being the radio nerd, I don't love the way that it sounds. But what a treat this was for me, and I hope you guys enjoy it. The legendary Don McLean right here on Glenn Clark Radio.
Well, it was 50 years ago this week that this song, American Pie, hit number 1 on the Billboard chart for the first of 4 consecutive weeks. And he is celebrating that anniversary this summer by bringing American Pie to us here in Baltimore at the Lyric Opera House on June 11th. What a thrill it is to be chatting with the legendary Don McLean this morning on GCR. Don, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It is such an honor. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. And I think I've been to the Lyric Theater before, sometime in the last 50 years, and I remember it, and it's a nice place.
Oh, it's a lovely place. It's going to be a wonderful night. I promise you that my father and I are going to be there to celebrate with you because it's a song that has meant a great deal to us. Don, if you could take me back, 51 years ago, right? You sit down, you write this epic song. What did you think then that the song was? Did you think it was a hit? Did you think it was something that would speak to anybody, or was it maybe just a cathartic song you were happy to write and then get on to writing more hits after that?
I knew that the record was not boring, and that it kept my attention. So whenever you're making a record, you want to listen to what you're doing and be honest about it, and sometimes we make boring records. But this one held my attention.
Well, and captivated. Sorry. No, it's totally understandable, Don. I know you got a lot of interviews you're doing right now, and kept the attention of the world for some time on top of that. Was there a moment for you where you realized, oh my gosh, this is speaking to people in a way that maybe I didn't know that it was going to speak to people?
Well, the first year I made $1 million, and I was broke the year before that. So this song had an impact on me instantly.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And I was able to buy a house, and it's a house that I lived in and owned for the next 30 years. So there's nothing in the world like having your own home, and then being able to afford it. Not a mansion, but a nice place, in the country or wherever, and there's a lot of them around. And I achieved that, and that was really the big goal that I had.
Well, success for sure. Don McLean is with us. American Pie 50th anniversary tour coming to the Lyric Opera House on June 11th. Don, over the years, of course, one of the things that we've been talking about the last couple of days since we found out we were going to be chatting with you was how much this song has been the soundtrack of so many sing-along scenarios for people. I referenced my father. One of the memories that means the most to me from my childhood is sitting in a car driving with him and belting out the lyrics of the song. And then, as I grew older, drunken nights of revelry and singing along with my friends in various stages. When you have been over the years in a car with someone or in a group and organically this song has come on, are you able to enjoy it the same way, or is it almost sort of an aw shucks embarrassing, I don't want to do this right now, this is my song, I'd rather not be singing along and belting out every lyric for you in a group of people?
No, I like all that stuff because the song comes at you in a bunch of different ways. The initial contact that a lot of young people had was listening to it before they went to bed when they were little children, as something they liked to hear. And then they grew up and they realized that it was about, somebody, Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and the Big Bopper. And then they started asking songs about America and about music and so on. And then the next level happens. And then, people would just having grown up with it, would get drunk or have a few beers, and somebody would crank that song up and everybody just loved singing it. So it entertains on a lot of levels. I was surprised by all this. I didn't plan on that, of course. I never thought an 8.5-minute song could be number one and could be a single in the first place. And I didn't think about singles. I'm not a hit artist. I've accidentally had a handful of, actually more than a handful of top 40 records, but I didn't plan on that.
And yet look what happened. Yet look how it stood the test of time. Don, was there any one person over the years, we actually do a sports show here in Baltimore, and I ask this question of athletes all the time. I say, is there someone that you found out as a fan that particularly is meaningful to you? You have touched an entire globe. Has there ever been any one person who came to you and said, I can't believe that I'm talking to you, and you're like, I can't believe I'm talking to you? Has there ever been one particular titan of industry or American president or athlete or somebody like that whose fandom of you and the song has meant a great deal to you over the years?
Well, I have a lot of people like that who have contacted me, and one of the ones that was the most surprising was Quentin Tarantino.
Wow.
Whose favorite song was And I Love You So.
Sure.
And his favorite album was my album called Chain Lightning. And he came to see me perform, and we hung out with each other for about half an hour, I guess. And so that was marvelous. And he's now married, and he did his first dance with his new bride to And I Love You So, which is what he said he was going to do.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool, man. That's a remarkable start. Now, okay, were you a huge Tarantino fan before that, or did you have to, suddenly become a huge Tarantino fan after that?
No, I am a big Jackie Brown fan.
Okay.
And so I knew Quentin quite well, and a number of his other movies as well. So, I was very happy to meet him.
So I put out to our listeners, we're chatting with Don McLean here on GCR, that you were coming on if anybody had any questions. And I got a bunch back, and I heard some legendary stories about shows you played at UMBC over the years and the University of Maryland, opening for Steppenwolf years ago. But one that stood out for me about the song in particular came from John Keller, who wanted to know why the lyrics were written as drinking whiskey and rye, since rye is a whiskey. He says, I know this is random, but it has been sticking with me for years. So Don McLean, I want to put it to you to put John Keller's thoughts to rest. Why drinking whiskey and rye?
Well, because I felt like it. I can tell you. That's the answer.
It's probably the nature of songwriting, correct? That sometimes you do things just because.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of nonsense in American Pie. And so I suppose that would qualify as nonsense.
That's so wonderful. Don, before I let you go, June 11th at the Lyric in Baltimore. We know that the tour is celebrating the 50th anniversary of American Pie, but what else should folks expect that come out to see on June 11th here in Baltimore?
Well, I've got a new album called American Boys, and that's the only other time I ever use the word America in a title. And that's going to come out sometime during the year. There'll be songs from that, songs from all my many, many albums, and songs that people know, and some they don't know. And it will be different because I only do the one show once. I don't do a show. I don't do a set, where I say the same things every night and do the same songs.
Well, that's great. So it'll be an opportunity to see something special and unique. LyricBaltimore.com to get your tickets. Don McLean, my father and I promise are going to be there. It's going to be a special night here in Baltimore. I can't tell you how much this means to me. I got to have my first sing-along with my own children this weekend to American Pie because I told them that you were going to be on my show. Thank you. What an honor it's been, and thank you for this joy that you have given me in my life, for not only this, but Vincent and Dreidel and so many songs that I have loved in my 40 years of life. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Well, you come by and say hello to me. I'd love to meet you, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you, Don.
There's about 1,000% chance that I take advantage of that, man. Are you kidding me? Holy crap. Don McLean on GCR was just a real treat. And if nobody else enjoyed that, I don't care because I did. And that's what I get to do every now and then on my show. Again, June 11th at the Lyric. It's going to be a special night, and I definitely will be there. I was just chatting with my father about it. We're gonna go to that show. We're gonna go. Dad, if you're listening, we're gonna go. Just be aware of that, and experience that. And seriously, surreal, man, goosebumps. Like when the phone rang this morning, I picked it up. I'm like, holy crap, it's Don McLean, man. And like I've had a few of those over the years. I don't get that way with athletes at all, just because of the nature of what we do. Legendary athletes have been people that I've had to have working relationships with over the years, right? Like I've told the story before that like the first time I realized that like there's still moments that kind of catch you. Like the first time I realized Ray Lewis knew my name. Like the first time he yelled at me by name in the facility one day. At first I was like, what the hell? Like I didn't know what I had said that made him mad, but apparently it was just that I had told him I wanted to talk to him, and he was like, get over it. He literally yelled. He like barked out. He's like, Glenn! And I'm like, what? Like, what the hell? And this is for first I was like, there has to be somebody else here named Glenn. Like it wasn't Eunice. He wasn't on the beat at the time. I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, me. Oh, yeah, right. So the guy still called me off guard, but like I've had to have working relationships with those people over the years. But I still allow myself every now and then when it's somebody from another field to be like, holy crap, like we're really doing this. This is really something we're doing right now. And it's so personal and so unique to me. Paul, not you, Paul from Orlando brought up, he's like, man, this is like of the level of Edward James Olmos. And we had Edward James Olmos on the show, which is incredibly random, and he's an absolute legend, but nothing that was personal for me, right? Like nothing. I know what a great actor Edward James Olmos is, and I know what an icon is and how much he means to a certain group of people, but nothing that was personal. This is personal. Like this is something that, and I say it's not unique to me in any way, right? Like everybody on the planet feels this way about American Pie, but it does. Like I have personal stories that mean so much to me. I compared it. I was one of the ones I was more excited about, and I'm not trying to compare the two. I was so excited when John McLean came on the show. Of course, you know him from Dr. Cox on Scrubs, and what else? He was Red Barber in the Jackie Robinson movie.
He was the a-hole boss in Point Break.
Yes, correct. I said his name wrong. What the hell is it?
John McGinley.
McGinley. I said McGlinchey. I don't know why I said McGlinchey. I'm thinking of Mike McGlinchey, the offensive lineman. John, thank you very much. John McGinley. And I was like, because I had a group of friends, and we all kind of watched Scrubs together, we would get together
Very
and hang
good
out
show.
and watch. It was a great show. It was a tremendous show. We would hang out together and watch Scrubs. And so it was like in a personal way, I felt a connection that was a little bit different than other significant guests. And we've had a lot of them over the years that are just very random but unbelievably significant. And some of them are just a bit more, they mean something more to me. And this one really hit me. And then it was cool watching over the last few days other people tell me their own personal stories about what American Pie has meant to them. And like I literally got messages from people about, hey, we brought, when I was a student, I think it was Stephen Pimlico said, I was a student at UMBC and we had Don McLean. I almost said John McClane. Bruce Willis running around in the air ducts. We had Don McLean come out before American Pie hit, right? Before it was on the radio. And, I think 50 people showed up for the show. And then we had done a deal where he was going to come back later, and you couldn't get a ticket. Like, it was impossible to get in once American Pie hit because it was so overwhelming. He's like, I just happened to be one of the lucky ones that was there for both shows. Like, I got to experience it before. And I actually did some research on that. Because somebody else told me about, like, I was at a Steppenwolf show at the University of Maryland, and Don McLean was the opening act. And I'm like, holy crap, what a show that is. Like, my God, that's amazing. Like, what I wouldn't give to be able to tell that story. And I did some research on that, and literally Don McLean the next day played that first show at UMBC, and he played American Pie. Like, you would have gotten to have heard, if you had gone to that show at UMBC, you would have heard Don McLean playing American Pie before anybody knew what American Pie was. It hadn't broken on the radio yet. Like, what a surreal feeling that must have been to have been one of the people at that show.
What? It hadn't broken on the radio?
It hadn't broken on the radio yet. It's like it just put it out. This is in a different time, a different era where a record would exist for a while before it would catch. His first album that he put out didn't really do much of anything commercially.
Mm-hmm.
So when he put out the second album, which was American Pie, there was no inclination that from moment one, radio stations, and this is the only way you could find music back in the day, that radio stations needed to play it. And it wasn't until I want to say like one DJ in New York started playing it, and then suddenly, everybody on the planet started playing it. But he was already touring because he was signed to a label. Like, he was already, like, that was a big part of what he did was he played all these, like, coffee houses and, whatever venues he could play, and colleges. Time made sense, and so he played a show at the University of Maryland opening for Steppenwolf. And the next day, he played a show at UMBC, which is this show that Steve was referring to that nobody went to. Like, nobody at all went to. And yet the handful of people that were there got to see Don McLean play American Pie with, 40 of their closest friends or whatever. Like, I mean, it's just such a cool
I'm
story.
wondering if that first DJ in New York who was like, I'm playing this. I
Yeah,
like this song.
Does
I'm
that make a
playing it.
career for you? Like, do you now get to, like, you don't have to worry about anything? Like, are you
the
just
guy?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. But, phew. That was so cool. All right. Thank you to Don McLean. And I am definitely going to be at the Lyric on June 11th. There is no doubt about that. All right. When we come back in, we'll get a tidbit. We'll get Tubular. We'll wrap it up. It is a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Duffy's Garage is a family-owned and operated car care facility in beautiful Baldwin, Maryland. An authorized Maryland inspection station and Napa Pro Care Center with ASE-certified techs. Tell them that Glenn Clark sent you and receive 10% off your service with a max discount of $150. You gotta trust where you take your car, so take it to where I take mine. Duffy's Garage in Baldwin. Duffy'sGarageMD.com.
From all of the biggest games to the smallest events, make every bet worth your while at MyBookie. Start by doubling your first deposit instantly with MyBookie's first deposit bonus up to $1,000. Double your money before you even place a bet, and all you have to do is sign up and deposit using the exclusive promo code PRESSBOX at mybookie.ag. If your first deposit is $100, MyBookie adds $100 so you can start with $200 to play with. If your first deposit is $1,000, MyBookie adds $1,000 so you can start start with $2,000 to play with. With tons of great games and prop bets to take advantage of this week, there is truly something for everyone. Don't wait any longer. Head to MyBookie today to redeem your double deposit bonus so you can start winning big today. That's promo code PRESSBOX to receive double your first deposit instantly in your account. No hassle, no wait. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
It's another cold winter here in Baltimore, but this time there's no hot stove to warm you up. Hi, I'm Paul Valley, and while there may be no activity in the world of baseball, I'll still be here every week with my co-host Zach Goodman to give you all the latest in the CBA negotiations as teams look to get back on the field in time for spring training. You can watch us live every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or facebook.com/PressBoxSports and listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. So tune in every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon for the latest in baseball coverage right here on the Bat Around.
Glory Days Grill's winter seasonal menu is back with comfort classics like their house-made meatloaf and short rib grilled cheese. It also features the center-cut sirloin with grilled shrimp, the char-grilled pork tenderloin, grilled meatloaf sandwich, smoky thigh wings with Alabama barbecue sauce, and a Brussels and bacon appetizer. All of these items pair well with Devil's Backbone 8-point IPA or their anniversary IPA brewed by Devil's Backbone. And try their seasonal cocktails, Blood Orange Bourbon Cider, Apple Ginger Mule, and Captain's Hot Cider. Find out more and get your order in today at glorydaysgrill.com. Great food, good sports.
Window Depot Baltimore provides the highest quality Pro-Via windows, doors, and siding for all budgets. The best is finally affordable. Call them today for a free in-home consultation at 410-941-3499. They also offer Zoom and FaceTime consultations in an effort to practice social distancing. A proud sponsor of the Tyus Bowser Show, you can find out more at WindowDepotBaltimore.com.
We can't imagine why you'd want to, but you can watch GCR live. It's at facebook.com/PressBoxSports and try to guess whether these guys are wearing any pants.
Our buddy Adam Pohl from the Bowie Bay Sox was responding to Andrew Brandt, said, I think it's all relative. If you pay less than most teams for a quarterback, it can be an advantage. Look at how many quarterbacks have won the Super Bowl before their huge increase in salary. Roethlisberger, Wilson, Mahomes stand out to me. Brady has always been a middle-of-the-pack paid quarterback. This is when people make this debate, they hang up on this. And it's, as I said back, there's two separate thoughts. The first being, if your quarterback can be so good that you have the opportunity to win the Super Bowl before he comes up for a contract, of course it's a huge advantage. It's a massive advantage to have a quarterback that's so good that you have that chance to win a Super Bowl before you have to pay him. But we're throwing that out of the window now. Now your quarterback's up for getting paid. What is the advantage of moving on and hoping to find another quarterback versus paying and going to try to win? There's no evidence that you can't win once you pay your quarterback. The teams that are in the mix overwhelmingly are teams that have paid their quarterbacks. Now, sometimes they don't actually win, as Andrew Brandt pointed out. Like Drew Brees didn't win another one. But he was in the mix every year. Every year. And if they don't get screwed by one of the worst calls in officiating history, they probably beat the Patriots and win another Super Bowl there at the end of his career. Aaron Rodgers makes plenty of money. They're in the mix every year.
Well, and now poor Tom Brady has to play till he's 50 to make up for all the money
all
left
the money.
on the table.
And by the way, that's also this is a misnomer that he hasn't been middle of the pack. He has been one of the higher paid quarterbacks. They have finessed some of the money. Remember, the Patriots were doing that wacky bit where they were giving some of it to his foundation under the table so that they didn't have to pay him quite as much. There's been this theory that Tom Brady was this ultimate team player he was, which was just always bunk. I mean, it was just always nonsense. Tom Brady has been paid plenty of money to play football, and didn't. When he got his first contracts, it wasn't after the quarterback contract boom, and then when he got more contracts, he got paid plenty.
And by the way, his wife is also a bajillionaire.
Yes, and that makes certainly a little bit of a difference in that world. It'd be wonderful. As Andrew Brandt pointed out, it would be so cool if there could be sort of a mid-range for quarterback contracts. There isn't. You know what the number is. That's what you're going to have to pay. It's as simple as that. Let's get a tidbit. Tidbit is brought to you today by the print issue of Press Box, which is available right now. It's the best of issue. On the cover, you see our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Justin Tucker, inside celebrating the top performances, people, and moments of 2021. Pick it up for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Pressbox, or read it all at pressboxonline.com/bestof.
Okay, so today's tidbit might be a little bit harder, so I'm going to give
good.
you two different options.
That's exactly what I need.
For how we're going to do it. All right, but in honor of having Don McLean on the program to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of American Pie, today's tidbit comes from 1971. In the 1971 season, Vida Blue of the Oakland Athletics was named both the AL MVP and the AL Cy Young recipient after finishing the season 24-8 with a 1.82 ERA and 301 strikeouts. Winning both awards in the same season is a rare feat, having only been accomplished 11 times in history. You can either tell me who the other 10 pitchers are to pull it off, or who the 4 pitchers are to do it since 1986.
I'll take a shot at it. You said there's 10?
Yes.
10. Okay. Well, Sandy Koufax, right?
Sandy Koufax, 1963.
Somebody did it recently. Who the hell was that? It was Verlander, right?
Justin Verlander in 2011.
Did Kershaw do it too?
Clayton Kershaw in 2014.
Okay. Are those are all the recent ones? Somebody do it more recently than that?
Those are all the recent ones. The next most recent is, should I tell you the date?
Well, hang on a second. Wait, if I need it. I'm pretty sure that Eckersley, after he had become a reliever, did it.
Eckersley in 1992.
92, yeah.
That's the next most recent.
I want to say Clemens in the 80s.
Clemens, 1986.
Okay.
Pretty solid roll here. It's
yeah, but I think it's about. I think it's about where I'm going to tail off. Jim Palmer should have, but he didn't.
No.
Boy. Oh boy. Bob Gibson.
Bob Gibson,
That's
1968.
Nothing more than a guess. Just a really good pitcher. With that in mind, other really good pitchers. Bob Feller.
No. This guy, one of these guys I will tell you, he is the reason I believe it was Mike Cuellar didn't win a Cy Young. It was either Mike Cuellar or Dave McNally. I can't remember off the top of my head. Had like a phenomenal season where it was like 195, but this guy's season was so otherworldly that you couldn't help but give him both awards.
I don't know why. Was it Denny McLain?
Denny McLain,
yeah, it does something.
He won
something like
games.
About that sounded familiar to me.
He won 31 games that year. 3 left. You've done better than I thought you would.
And they're all pre-1980?
No, 2 of them are in the 80s.
2 of them are in the 80s. Oh, my. In the 80s. I don't think it was Dwight Gooden.
Though he should have. That 86 season was ridiculous.
No doubt. I don't think it was Necro. Raleigh Fingers?
Raleigh Fingers, 1981.
Okay.
These last 2 guys, if you got them, I'd be surprised. Although I'm shocked that you got 8 with basically 8 guesses.
No, not 8, but close. I don't know. And the other one was when? It was another one in the 80s?
84 and 56.
Brett Saberhagen? I don't think he ever won.
No.
Steve Carlton.
No. I'll be honest, I'd never heard of this guy, so I'd be shocked if you got this.
Good. That's a good standard. Never heard of him. And they won. I won Cy Young and MVP, and you've never heard of him. That is amazing. Well, then it's almost no chance that I know who it is.
You might. I probably have heard of this guy and forgot about him.
So it's not Goose Gossage. It's not. I don't know. Go ahead. I mean,
Willie Hernandez, 1984.
Okay, I've heard of him, but I definitely had no idea that he had won.
And then, do you want me to just give you the other one?
Yeah, probably.
Don Newcomb in 1956.
I might have gotten Don Newcomb eventually, but all right, that's a good list. That's a very good list.
Yeah, you did really well.
Good list. Yeah, I did better than I expected to do, but a few of those, I definitely we were never getting around to Willie Hernandez. That was never happening.
That was the one where he might get Newcomb. Willie Hernandez, I don't think he's going to get it.
No doubt about it. All right, Tidbit was also brought to you today by Mobile One. Mobile One full synthetic motor oil helps extend engine life. Visit your local Jiffy Lube service center. Ask for Mobile One. Tubular is brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel. That's where we're going to be on Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock, for the Buccaneers-Rams game. Looking forward to that. I'll be hanging out with the NFL chick, Sarita Hubbard. If you've never bet before and you want to learn about betting, great opportunity for you to do that. We're going to help you out. Just come see us. We'll help you out. We'll teach you some things about betting, which you can, of course, do right there on their 50 self-service kiosks. What did I just say?
Kiosks.
Kiosks? 50 self-service kiosks in the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. If you know about betting and you want to help me make some money on Sunday, I would gladly accept your advice. Come out, hang out. We're going to have a great time. If you've not seen it yet, it is immaculate. What a place this is. We're going to have an awesome time hanging out for the first game on Sunday, the 3 o'clock game, Rams-Buccaneers. And look, I'm not like a Rams fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we can all get together and agree that we're rooting like hell against Tom Brady, right? Like we can all just we can celebrate when the Rams do something good. I'm not telling you I want to see the Rams win the Super Bowl. I just don't want to see Tom Brady win the Super Bowl. So
the running back Funk from Maryland plays
Jake
for the
Funk
Rams.
played last night,
for the
of
Rams,
course.
and
Yep,
Eric
got in the
Weddle's
game.
there, so you can root for the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'm not telling you I'm not going to pretend to be a Rams fan. I'm just not.
Neither
I have no feelings whatsoever towards the Los Angeles Rams. Nothing. Zip, zero, zilch. But I have negative feelings towards the guy that's the quarterback of the other team, so I will root like hell against him.
I do feel for the Rams fan base because if they don't win a Super Bowl after all the picks that they've given up over the years,
they might never. I hear what you're saying, but they also don't really exist either. They literally just moved there 3 years ago, so I'm not really sure there is a fan base to feel for.
Fair enough. Well, they were there back in the day.
Some of them were. Like a small percentage of them might have been Rams fans.
80-year-old Charlie Ford.
There's that. Sure. All right, here's what's coming up tonight. Maryland, Michigan, 7 o'clock on ESPN2 if you want to watch your puppy die. Ohio State, I mean, dude, it's what it is. Like, what do you want me to say? I mean, come on, man. BTN's got Ohio State and IUPUI. Why is that a game that's happening in January? That's at 7, then Wisconsin Northwestern at 9. The rest of the college basketball, find it at glennclarkradio.com. By the way, coverage of the Australian Open continues at 9. Francis Tiafoe was a winner last night. One of the matches I made a couple dollars on. So thank you to Big Foe. Coverage back at 9. And so tonight would be Rafael Nadal, although I think it's a late night for Rafael Nadal. Starts on ESPN Plus at 7. Or if you're like me and you have the DirecTV, and the only reason why you keep DirecTV is because of the Grand Slams, good news, you can watch it on your TV. Jets Capitals at 7 on NBC Sports Washington, ESPN Plus and Hulu for Islanders Flyers at 7, NBA TV for T-Wolves Knicks at 7:30, Pistons Warriors at 10, the USA Network for Chelsea against Brighton and Hove Albion at 3. Always unfair that you have to play against both. And then the WWE NXT tonight at 8. Some non-sports highlights.
So I will admit that I made a mistake yesterday with the guests on the Tonight shows, on the late shows. I fixed it on the website, but the guests that I said were for last night are actually for tonight. So Ricky Gervais is on the Tonight Show tonight, etc.
Anything else?
American Auto at 8 on NBC, Grand Crew at 8:30. This Is Us for Glenn at 9 o'clock on NBC.
I do like, by the way, a Grand Crew and American Auto. Also, is Tuesday nights the night for Abbott Elementary? Because I'm in on that.
I think that's Wednesdays.
Okay.
Also, tonight on Hulu, How I Met Your Father.
Oh, yeah. It's not for me.
I'd never heard of it until I looked up these shows. 2-episode series premiere.
You are wrong. Abbott Elementary is on Tuesday nights.
Is it?
It is. Tuesdays at 9. Get on that. Get on that.
Oh, no, I have it listed. I have it listed. I just didn't think you were interested. I do have it listed.
Well, then why didn't, when I asked the question, did you not say?
Because I wasn't looking at ABC.
Right.
I was looking at NBC.
It's definitely not on NBC. It's on ABC.
Yeah. My apologies. Yes.
Yeah, way to screw it all up. Way to screw it all up.
As I always do.
Anything else?
It's on at 9 o'clock tonight. No, that's about it.
All right, very good. All right, thanks to Don McLean. Holy crap, thanks to Don McLean. Holy crap, thanks to Don McLean. Thanks also today to Andrew Brandt as well as to Patrick Stevens. We'll get it all up in the greatest hits section of the
Archives.
tab at glennclarkradio.com. On the program tomorrow, the world's strongest man, a man who is a very accomplished Olympic powerlifter and a Hall of Famer as a professional wrestler. Mark Henry is going to join us. AEW is going to be in D.C. For 2 shows this week, and in between, Mark Henry's coming up to Baltimore to do an event at Jimmy's to raise money for the Brigance Brigade, which we like. So that's on Thursday night. Normally we would do this type of thing on the wrestling show, but unfortunately the wrestling show will not be taping before Thursday night, so we want to make sure we get some love to Jimmy's in that event that they're doing for Brigance Brigade. So Mark Henry is going to join us tomorrow. I assume Drew Forrester will be joining us tomorrow, and, of course, as always, Stuff and Things on the program. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, CCBC, Glory Days Grill, Royal Farms, ExxonMobil, Great 8's Memorabilia, Live Casino and Hotel, Underdog Fantasy Football, Duffy's Garage in Baldwin, Window Depot, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com, and MyBookie. Thanks to Paul. Follow him on Twitter, at Paul Valley III. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday evening. Go Maryland. Sure, why not? Duke sucks. Ohio State sucks too.